hoping everyone can see my screen. Yeah, awesome. Thank you. We are Anita and Emma, and we're here from Smartbox, and we're here to talk about SuperCore. So today we are going to just introduce ourselves and talk a little bit about Smartbox, not too long, but just to give you an idea of who we are as a company working with Arb and Toft. We're then going to give you an introduction to SuperCore, talk about some of the themes and things that we've tried to do in the layout and in the research that we've used to inform our decisions. And then we're going to actually dive into SuperCore itself and show you around the grid set how you to become familiar with it and show you some of the detail that we've talked about. And then we'll have some time for any questions. Please feel free to use the chat throughout, and Anita can help kind of check any questions to make sure we cover those as we go through, and then any that we don't cover we can discuss at the end. Okay. So as I said, my name's Emma. I've been with Smartbox for about 4 years now. I started out in the support team, supporting users from all over the world to get the best from their Smartbox products, whether that's the software or whether that's the hardware. And then I recently, it's coming up to 2 years now, joined the global partners team, and I now look after our different partners all over the world, which I really enjoy getting to see how AAC is used in lots of different countries in lots of different ways. And I support all of those partners across the world, again, to get the best of their Smartbox products, software and hardware. And then I'm joined by Anita.
Yep. Hi, so my name's Anita. I've been at Smartbox for just over a year. I've got a background in special education, so I and I work in the content team at Smartbox, so I work a lot with the various symbol sets, and I've been involved recently with helping to support the translations of SuperCore into a couple of different languages, but working really closely with various partners to make sure that SuperCore works in their languages. Because as you'll see, there's quite a lot built into it that is different between English and some other languages, so we've had to make some adjustments to make it work in different languages, which has been really great and really exciting to see it working in so many different ways.
Yeah, thank you. Unfortunately, neither of us speak Danish, so if there is anything you don't understand, please feel free to interject. I think you should have the option to put your hand up, and then I'm sure Casper can help us translate if anything is not clear. Okay. So Smartbox, we started off a very small family-based company, not too dissimilar from Arb and Toft actually, in the UK. So we were set up by a husband and wife, and their 2 children actually, it's weird to call them children, they're not children, but their children actually still work for Smartbox, and one of them is actually the managing director now. So yeah, we started off as a small family business in their basement, in their family home. And then since then, about 20 years ago, we've expanded to a company. We're about 70 people, probably a bit more than that now, actually. Predominantly based in the UK, but we also have a very small office in the US, which again is starting to grow. So yeah, we have everything we do at Smartbox, hardware and software, is all done internally. So in our Malvern office, we have like all of our customer facing members of staff. So our support teams, our repair teams, our production teams, our admin teams are all in our head office in Malvern. And then we have kind of all of our creative teams in Bristol. So our software development team, all of that is done internally. Our hardware development team and our marketing team are all based in Bristol. So yeah.
And content.
Oh yeah, and content, sorry. So yeah, we're a team of about 70 people. Like I said, we sell internationally. We only sell into the UK and US ourselves. We have a fabulous network of partners which we use to sell into different markets, because they're local people who understand the funding and the needs of the local market. So we have a very trusted network of partners amongst lots of different countries internationally. So it's really nice to work with Arbentoft in Denmark. Okay, so that's a little bit about Smartbox and who we are. So let's get to why we're here today, which is to look at Supercore and really understand some of the thinking. Some of the thinking behind the way things are designed, and really get to the crux of those designs. So Supercore is a symbol-based vocabulary designed to support AAC users to learn, navigate and succeed at communication. And I'm hoping by the end of this talk, you'll really see how we've really thought about how we can make communication as accessible and easy to access for individuals as possible. So the Supercore grid sets are kind of aimed at that 5 to 12-year-old age, and you'll see that with some of the content and the types of words that we're using within the grid set. I'm sure you're all familiar with core vocabulary. So this is a core-based vocabulary set, which is really centered around that core vocabulary, which is 80% of everything that we say. Okay, and we'll look at that a little bit more when we see the grid set and we see how it's laid out. It's based on research, best practice and clinical experience. So we have 2 speech and language therapists that work at Smartbox internally. Daisy, who heads up Anita's team, is a speech and language therapist who has been with us. I think she's been with us about 5 or 6 years, hasn't she, Anita?
Yeah, I think it's around that.
Yeah, so before Daisy worked with us at Smartbox, she was a practicing speech and language therapist she's worked in schools, she's worked for local authorities like providers of funding, and has so much experience in working with a range of disabilities, but predominantly children. And yeah, she's just really had a great passion for supporting high-tech AAC. So the grid set was designed by Daisy herself. It was a mammoth project to it was a mammoth project with lots of research taking place to really make informed decisions about what vocabulary to include and how to lay things out to really aid the development and understanding of the grid set for somebody just starting out with AAC. You'll see there's lots of activities in the grid set which are around play, because we know that children are more motivated if it's things they enjoy doing and it's language that they understand. So it's really supporting the interaction of a child with a speech and language therapist or with their parents or with their peers. So you'll see that through the language that we use in the grid set. We've also done research into which vocabulary children in the Danish language, which vocabulary they use most and most frequently at that age group and in that ability. And it's centered on core vocabulary with over 2,500 of the most common words and phrases. So we'll appreciate that that's a lot of words, but we'll see throughout the grid set there is huge consideration into how those words are organized to make them as accessible and easy to find. It's all very well having 2,500 words, but if they're not organized in a way that's easy to find and accessible, then it's completely useless. So we'll take a look at that.
And there's also space in the grid set. You'll see as you move through it, there is also space to add more vocabulary if needed, and to personalize it for the user. So, 2,500 words seems like a lot, but we quite often have people saying, oh, but this particular word isn't there. And it was a careful decision made by Daisy not to include every single word that she could possibly think of, because we want to teach children how to explain words that they might not have at the tip of their fingers all of the time. So you'd use other ways of getting to that word, but also, as I said, there's space to add things that are really important to different users, and things like favorite foods, favorite toys and things like that can be added as well.
Definitely. And we'll show you that. So again, Supercore is made with consistent and meaningful organisation. So we've touched on like the meaningful organisation, but the consistency of words. So the same vocabulary will show in different places where it's relevant, and you'll also see where that vocabulary is used in lots of different contexts and settings. The positioning of that vocabulary is consistent. So if you can expect to find it in one area in the grid set, when we go navigate to another area of the grid set, it will stay in the same location where possible. So we'll demonstrate that to you when we show you that. It's suitable for any access method. So no matter the individual you're working with and their access requirements, the grid set is built so that it works with somebody that uses eye gaze, uses switch, uses touch, uses a head pointer. So if you're working with someone who's trying to establish what is the best access method for them, they can try it with the same vocabulary, which we know is really important when someone's first starting out. So there is that flexibility, definitely. We have simple learning grids for very early AAC exploration. So the Supercore learning grids offer a simplified version of the Supercore activities. So the idea of these is to really build a foundation for the child, as well as the people around the child. So they're really getting used to that, using AAC initially, and then understanding that by selecting a word, something happens, and it just really makes it engaging for the individual, but then also a way for those around them to practice using AAC. So there's the chance for modelling, and all of the words and vocabulary within the Supercore learning grids are meaningful in that activity. So it's no fail. So any word that they select, they should be having communicative success. And then both Supercore learning grids and Supercore itself are available on Windows and iOS. So they work on our Grid 3 platform, as well as our Grid for iPad platform. Is that everything, Anita? Is it time to jump in?
I think it is, yeah.
Okay, so let's jump into the grid set itself. So I'm just going to jump into Grid Explorer a minute. So this is what the two grid sets look like from Grid Explorer. Like I mentioned, you have the Supercore learning grid sets and Supercore 50. So let's take a quick look at Supercore learning grid sets. We've got them in the two sizes, 12 cells and 20 cells. And you've got daily and play activities, and they're the same, but just different cell sizes. So if we take a look into daily and just choose, for example, sleep. So this is an activity which, like I said, will give individuals and those around the individuals the opportunity to practice using AAC in a situation which is really familiar, and make selections that are always going to be relevant to what we're doing. The thing to note about this as well, that all of the cells on here are consistent throughout all of the learning activities. You'll see the vocabulary that is the same will stay in the same location. So we're already getting used to where we can find those words across the different activities. And what's really nice as well is that Grid has the function to print. So for those times where you don't have your high-tech AAC available, you have the option to print these. You can laminate them and have them available really easily. And what we tend to see people doing, and we recommend really, is people printing these resources and having them available around the home. So we have the one by the bath at bath time, we have the one in the kitchen when we're eating, we have ones by the toy box for when we're playing. And that's really what these activities are about. Let me show you some of the play ones here. So we've got four to play. So they're really allowing interaction and modelling between the child and the facilitator. So.
And just to note that in the learning grids, the left-hand column that's got the black border, that's our core vocabulary. And you'll see when we jump into the Supercore 50 grid set that forms part of the core block, which is consistent on a lot of pages. And then the activity-specific vocabulary on the right-hand side is what forms the dynamic columns, which I'll show you in a minute. So it's also designed to feel familiar when a user moves from using the learning grids perhaps to exploring the full grid set. They should find some familiarity in the layout and the consistency between the two. Okay,
thank you. Right, any questions about the learning grids before we move back to Supercore 50? No? Okay, feel free to add anything to the chat as well, and we can ask it at the we can cover it at the end. Okay, so Supercore 50. So as we said, it's a core-based vocabulary. So like Anita said, this vocabulary here is our core, and this is available through most of the grid set. We keep it available so that children are able to quickly access this core, whilst the dynamic columns, which are these two columns on the right hand side, change to fit the context. So this is your fringe vocabulary that sits alongside the core. So if we go to some of the activities that we've just seen, for example, you'll see we've still got the core available to build our sentence, and then we've got the fringe vocabulary, which again is the same vocabulary and the same symbols that we've already been familiar with in the learning grids. So what we'll also see is when we select the activity, we've also now got some longer phrases which are to really help with success. So we know that although it's ideal for the child to create sentences themselves, we know that to experience success quickly is really powerful. So we've got some whole phrases here which are relevant. So if we select some of the examples, we've got a whole phrase that the child is able to use in that setting, which again is allowing them to experience quick success. Okay. If we go back to the homepage and then we show you examples of some of the play as well. Again, it's the consistent play activities with the same language, same symbols. We've tried to group the words in exactly the same places as well. So big and little are together, up and down, exactly the same way as they are in the learning grids. And again, we've got the phrases as well to help with quick success. So back to the main core vocabulary. So I'm sure you're all familiar with the Fitzgerald key. Again, we've used this throughout the grid sets, Supercore 50, as well as the learning grids. These purple words, they look like prediction cells. but actually these are useful next words. So the difference between useful next words and prediction cells is that rather than just predicting any word, if I say I, for example, you'll see that the words all change. And these aren't just acting like prediction cells that could predict any words that you've used previously or and unpredictably. These are all programmed cells so that when we make any typical selection, they're going to be giving us the most useful next word. So we've actually programmed, I say we, in conjunction with Arventoft, have actually programmed the most useful next words to the individual. So it's to aid sentence building, but not only aid sentence building, but also we're stopping the of prediction cells, so that the user will get to learn whenever they press a cell, they will have the same useful next word. So they will get to learn the position and what normally comes next. So we're trying to take away any anomalies and just make it as really familiar and useful as possible.
And they're also, the words in those cells are consistently located. So and some of them overlap. So you can see yai compared to v, they had the same verbs in the same places. So there's some familiarity there, again, to help the learner know what to expect when they're selecting those cells.
Exactly. So we were talking about before some consistent and meaningful organization of the words. So I just want to give you like some examples of that. So we're going to navigate away from the core page. So like I said, we've got these dynamic columns which just act as the fringe vocabulary, but we've also got additional categories such as people and describing words. But we're going to show you some examples of how we keep consistent locations across these different categories. So if we go into people, you can see all of the words are organized into groups, and we get asked a lot about why they're organized like that. And the research tends to show that organizing things in alphabetical order, although that might be useful for you and I because we know the alphabet and we can quite quickly then find what we need, we've ordered these in groups, and we've always start with the most popular in the top left corner. So we're quickly learning throughout the different pages that we can always find the most commonly used in the top left to the least commonly used in the bottom right. And you'll have to excuse me because I can't remember the English version, so my translation skills are not going to be great. But yeah, we'll always start in the top left with the most common, and that's not only because the child will instantly start to learn that the most commonly used there are in the top left corner, but also for an access perspective, for people that use switches. It's obviously quicker to navigate to the top left corner for switch scan users. Okay, so we're going to go to jobs, and then you'll see again we're all grouped in the same semantic way, and we're going to select policeman. Okay, so just take notice of where policeman was laid out there. And then let's go to places, and let's look at more, and we're going to go to buildings, and you'll see that the police station, the fire station, the hospital are already grouped in that similar area. So without even knowing to it, our eye is going to be drawn to the same place, and quite quickly we'll see that consistent locating of vocabulary. Another example of this would be a police car. So let's go to topics, and go to vehicles. And then again, you'll see we've got the same consistent location for police car here. So wherever we can, we've always grouped the individual words to be in a meaningful location. So this is another example of how the vocabulary on the topics pages are grouped. So again, we've got the most common in the top left corner going down to those that are least common in the bottom right corner. So these are grouped into things, things with wheels, things on tracks, things that fly. Again, so we're grouping them into a way that is useful for a child that's learning vocabulary. Okay, you might have noticed on this topics page, we've got the endings in the bottom right corner. So this is to allow users to change the ending of the word to make it correct in the correct context. So for example, if we select bus and then we go to endings, we can change the word so that it can be used as in a bus or the bus, and it adds the correct ending. And you may have noticed that it's deleted the S. So we've programmed it to work to add the correct ending for all of the vocabulary on this page. And that will be consistent across all of the topic pages. So if we go into sports, for example, you've got the option here to select a word and then also again go to the endings page so the user can correct it if needed. Okay. One of the really powerful tools within SuperCore is the news page. So this is really promoting communication between AAC users and different settings. So whether they're at school, whether they're with their peers, whether they've been at school and have gone home, this will allow them to quickly have some success and communicate about their day. So it's really easy to program different elements about the individual's day so they can share that news across all of those different contexts, again, to really promote success. And motivation from the user, so they can talk about what they've done at school today, with their family, with their friends, and really have meaningful conversation across different contexts. While we're on the thread of messages, we've also got the messages here. So we've got the phrases within each of the activities pages, but then we've also got messages here to support, again, quick success and conversation. So these are really useful around conversation repair or just general conversation when meeting an individual. So if we go into here, you'll see the users are able to express that the vocabulary they need is not in their communication aid, or perhaps they need more time. It's a really nice way of preparing the conversation without the child being overwhelmed or not knowing what to say. So we can teach these quite quickly. Feel free to chip in about any of the message pages, Anita.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to say that, as you can see, they're grouped along the bottom, and as I mentioned earlier, there's lots of space to add your own messages. So if there's particular things that a user likes to say often, or it's useful for them to say often. You know, for example, with the conversation or the fixing bit in the black column there, you might like to add something like, please let me finish, or you can guess what I'm trying to say, or things like that, that might be specific to particular users, and then it's nice and easy for them to get there to say that. And similarly, you'll find, so the me and the you column at the end, the last two, Emma, they are things like my name is and I live. Those will need personalizing for individual users. So at the moment they are prompts. They're there to kind of prompt the user or whoever's supporting them to add that information in, but you can make them really powerful by adding their actual name and adding what their favorite book is, so that that's sort of information that they can give during a conversation. And then if you jump to the you one, thank you, they're the equivalent questions. So they can ask people that they meet, what's your favorite color, or what do you like watching on TV? And it just it really, as Emma said, encourages that interaction, and in a way that, you know, as much as we want users to be building their own sentences using the core and the fringe vocabulary, this is also a nice quick win for them as well, to be able to have that really meaningful interaction.
Yeah, thank you.
Did you want me to talk through some of the grammar stuff, Emma?
Yeah, let's go to grammar, everyone's favourite topic.
So this is a topic I've had to learn a lot about while I've been working on the translations of SuperCore. So there's a number of grammar features built into SuperCore. So obviously you've got the left to right a layout that supports building a sentence. So you've got to start with your pronoun, choose a verb, and then you can go on into your fringe vocabulary. You'll notice have the dark more to select the correct version of the word. So for example, denne, if you click that one, you can the user can choose denne or det. That's if they are at the level where they're able to understand the difference between those two. If they're not either one of those, they can pop it in. It takes them back to where they were making their sentence. So you'll find those throughout the grid set. They're just there to offer a little bit more choice to choose the correct article or word. And then, and similarly in the people grid, actually, there's a number of them there. So if you're talking about my or your, you can have the different options to make it agree with the object that you're talking about. And then if you jump back, Emma, thank you. The other thing that's also been built in is in the describing section. We know that adjectives need to agree with nouns in Danish. So you have the two links at the top, which allow you to change the form of the verb to agree with either the plural or the different form of the noun. And we recognize that not all users will necessarily be at that level where they're ready to make those choices of the correct, you know, the grammatically correct. So they can still just choose the base form because that's what appears when you first jump in to describe. But if they are able to understand that level of grammar, then they have those options there for them. And that's similar with the endings grid that Emma showed you earlier, that if you don't know which ending, you don't need to go to that section to choose an ending for a word. You could just use the base form and the meaning, I think, would still be clear. And then if you go to the magic wand grid, Emma, in fact, if you could choose a verb first. Thank you, just to demonstrate something. So we also have this area called the magic wand, and that's somewhere you can go to sort of fix bits of the sentence that aren't working. So it offers different forms of the verb, for example, so you can past tense or the future tense. You can choose your past participle there as well. And you can also see that the word endings that Emma showed you earlier are available there as well. So if you find a word, for example, in your dynamic columns and you want to make it agree, the options are there for you. Also in the magic wand, just to point out, we have the settings grid, which has a load of settings for your different access options and things like that. You can change the volume, and they're all accessible and friendly for users to understand as well. And we also have the find word function, which is it's great. The find word can be accessed in a couple of different ways. This is how to access it through the grid set. So if you had, as Emma had, a word in the chat writing area, it takes the last word and it searches through the grid set and it shows you where you can find it through the grid set to find a particular form of help, I think. But if you had, for example, the word for ball or train in there, it would search you, it would take you through the path of the grid set to find it. And you can also use it if you're supporting a user, as Emma's just demonstrated, using the menu on the top left, and then you can type in, if you type in, I'm trying to think of a Danish word now, bus, B-U-S, and it will show you, when you use it from the menu, it gives you a couple of different options of where you might find that word. So that's really useful if you are new to SuperCore and you're preparing for an activity or a session and you want to just find out where the language might be.
E-bus.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you want to talk about the keyboards?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a number of keyboards available in SuperCore. We have the keyboards that say the letter name as you are selecting the letter, so to give that auditory feedback for the users. But there's also different layouts for the keyboards. So there's an A to Z layout, there's the QWERTY layout as well, which obviously replicates a keyboard layout. And then there's also keyboards that offer the prediction cell function that Emma talked about earlier. So maybe if you jump into QWERTY with the prediction, yeah, you'll see that it's the familiar QWERTY layout if that's what the user wants to use. And as you start typing a word, you would get prediction as you would sort of on your mobile phone or anything like that. And that's based on the prediction there is offered by SwiftKey, so it's quite a generic prediction system.
Busser.
Okay, so just some other little things which I think people have a lot of success with when using SuperCore first starting out. I'm going to try and remember in Danish. Is if we go to topics, and then if we go to jokes, we've got some jokes here which are really nice for, again, promoting that two-way conversation. So we give the option to ask a joke and tell the answer.
And we have to trust you that it's funny.
Yeah, I presume that's funny in Danish. Yeah, so there's a number of jokes there, and then also just because as therapists, I'm sure activities to do with children are always good. I'm hoping, do you have some books, Anita?
Yes, so if you yep, select, no, go back one, sorry. I didn't see where you jumped into it from. So it's the next one down, story, and then more.
Okay.
And then there's a couple of stories there.
So I just saw these flash up when we use the find word, but it's a really nice way to interact while reading a book, so the user can join in, make comments, or talk about the characters and things. Again, these are success-driven activities, so we're allowing for the vocabulary to match the book. And there's also templates, so if there's any books in particular that they're looking at school or that they particularly enjoy, you've got the template to add in your own vocabulary for that book there, as well as the popular books that are already written. So we touched on before having places to personalise, and we know that having personalizations is really motivating. So we've touched on the fact that you can add your own books and your own messages, but just to show you some other places. So if we go to people, and yeah, I think, is it in here?
In family?
Yeah,
There's
family, you've got the space to add your own family members.
And what's really nice about Grid is because the editing is so easy. You can go in and you can add your family members or your friends, and you can even add their photos. You know, it's really quick and easy to do. Thanks, Emma. So you can search this. Sorry, go for it.
Oh, it's because it's in Danish. I don't know the Danish word for girl. But yes, I can search for a symbol. I can find a picture that's already on my device. I can search the web, or I can use the camera to take a picture there. And then I'm just going to choose anything. Sorry. Yeah, quickly choose a symbol. And then come out. And we've really quickly added a cell. Other places to personalize, like I said, you've got your book, and if we go back, have I come out?
Yeah.
Oops. It's because I've edited, I've got it stuck. There we go. If we go to topics, we've also got blank pages so that we can add additional topics if there's something particular that the individual likes to communicate about, as well as there being spaces on some of the topic grids as well. So for example, if we go to drinks, if there was additional drinks that we wanted to add, there's plenty of space to do that. Any other places to personalize?
Yeah, I was just going to say in the dynamic columns, so in the daily and the play, both of those have some blank templates set up. So if you jump onto one of those, the blank ones, you can see it keeps the core consistent view as we've talked about, and then you've got the space to add in the vocabulary for a particular, say there was a particular daily routine that someone does, or a particular play activity that they like, and then you can add some phrases that go along with that as well.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I think we're getting to the end of the things that we were demonstrating. Anything else that you want to add about, Anita?
I think we've covered most of it, yeah, unless there are any specific questions or anything anyone wants to see.
Could you maybe talk about the extension? I know it isn't available in Danish. It was just signed up yesterday and will be released soon, but that gives a perspective on age, I would say. But could you please cover that? I don't know if you have it available in English. I think it would be fine to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want me to talk about it, Emma, while you're finding it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so recently in English, we released an update for SuperCore, which actually introduces some teen and adult vocabulary, and it gives you the options. So you'll see in a minute when Emma opens up the grid set, for the first time, you have a choice of which vocabulary you want to use, whether you want the child vocabulary or the teen and adult vocabulary. And if you go to teen and adult, thank you. It gives you a bit of information about what's different on here. There's a warning that there is some explicit language. There's a bit more control in there, which we can show you. And then when you select start, it sets this grid as your home grid. So you wouldn't see that menu again unless you go looking for it.
It's gone.
Yeah, so it goes straight to your home grid once you've selected which vocabulary. And the differences in between the two vocabularies, they're not in the core vocabulary, because we know that core stays the same whatever age you are. You use those same core words, but the differences are in the dynamic columns and the topics. So for example, the leisure activities, what was play and things like bubbles and building, become more age appropriate for older users. Things like hanging out with friends, computer games. There's a beauty section talking about, you know, going to the salon and getting your hair cut and painting your nails and things like that. So there's different leisure activities for older users as well, just to try and make it a little bit more motivating. And some of the daily activities, if you jump home, the daily life activities, we've kept some of them the same. So toilet and eating and drinking, you know, they're relevant regardless of your age, but we've added in some more independence activities. So things like accessibility, or scheduling or medical things, thinking about users who may be going out in the world with a bit more independence, but may need to be able to tell the doctor that they need a repeat prescription, or that they're feeling ill, or something is uncomfortable. That language is there for them. As always with SuperCore, it's paired with the core language, so it's really powerful. They can create a sentence, which is much easier to do in English, isn't it, Emma, when you speak English. So just a couple of other things about the, we've also introduced the phrase list, which is a really nice new function for older users. So where we had the static phrases for younger users, because we want them to learn nice, familiar, predictable things. For older users, we've given them the option to add their own phrases and to edit their phrase list a little bit, so they can, if there's things that they say more often, they can add them in and save them so they're easier to say next time. If there's things that are less relevant to them, they can remove them and edit their phrase list that way. So that those are available for all of the daily activities and the new leisure grids. If you jump back home, thank you. We've also introduced some new topics. So we've kept the same topics that were available for the child vocabulary, but we've added some new things like words for relationships, for TV and film, talking about the environment, politics and crime. It's just sort of concepts that are more appropriate for older users. So we've added those topics in there as well. We've also added the slang and swearing section, which has proved really popular in English so far. A lot of users have come back to us and said, we're so pleased that we can swear now. So I'm hoping we can find the equivalents in Danish as well. And if you jump back home, Emma, as I said at the beginning, what's important to note is that the core doesn't change. So none of that core block or any of the additional bits, so the people, questions, actions, they're all consistent. So if you have a user who started using SuperCore as when they were younger, and then they progress on to using the teen and adult vocabulary as they get older, all of that stays the same and familiar to them, and also any personalizations that they've made, for example, adding in their family or their friends, that all stays the same. So they don't lose that when they move between vocabularies, and that was something we were really keen to do. So as Casper said, it's not quite there in Danish yet. We are working on the translation, and we're working on getting it into an update coming soon. So that will be really exciting to have that choice of vocabulary in Danish as well.
Yeah. Just one thing I realised we didn't discuss is the fact that on some pages, when you make a selection, it jumps back automatically to the home page. So that's obviously made to aid speed, and so that you can make less selections. So for example, the grammar as well does that. When we make the selection, it automatically jumps back. So like I said, that's to aid the speed and less selections for the user. But if there's ever a time when you don't want it to automatically jump back, you have the option in the top left corner to stay here, and that will allow you to make more selections before you jump back.
And just to add that where it jumps back to is where you jumped from. So it won't, if you were, for example, in one of the play activities and you needed to go to describe, to choose the word fun or something like that, it will take you back to that same activity. So you go to describe.
Yeah.
And I think fun is sure.
No idea.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, it takes you back to that same activities so that you can carry on talking about what you were.
Yeah, so that's called self-closing. Okay, yeah, so I think that's everything that we wanted to kind of explain and to cover. So if you have any questions, feel free to pop those in the chat now. Otherwise, yeah, that's us done. Casper?
Well, yeah, that's really good.
Is anyone there? Have we sent everybody to sleep?